never thought my career would take a turn because of a plane seat assignment, but here we are. On an Emirates flight to Dubai, a major shareholder leaned closer than necessary and said, "The board is plotting a coup." Then he added, almost like a threat, "Without me, you're nothing." That's how this whole mess started. And I'm 27, an analyst based in Berlin. My life until then was spreadsheets, overpriced lattes, and staying invisible in meetings. This was my first time trusted with a global summit. I promised myself I'd keep my head down and not make mistakes. My worst fear was losing my accreditation badge. Without it, I'd be nobody at the event. When my upgrade email came through, I thought it was luck. Business class, a shell seat, space for shoes, and a small lamp glowing softly above the tray. The cabin smelled like coffee mixed with that sterile airplane air. I remember feeling proud for a second. Then he sat down next to me. NNHE knew my name before I said it. He listed the project I worked on 2 years ago like he'd memorized my resume. My nerves spiked. I smiled politely because that's what you do when someone that powerful pays attention. But already my brain whispered, "This isn't casual." NNTHE first red flag came fast. When the flight attendant poured champagne, he slid my glass toward me with 2 fingers. "You're a fast learner," he said, tone flat. My palm left a damp print on the stem when I picked it up. That detail sticks in my mind. And I tried to focus on my notes. But then came the second flag. "You're too sensitive." He said it when I shifted in my seat at one of his questions about office gossip. Who sits with who? Who orders sushi? Who gets invited to dinners? My chest tightened. I kept my face neutral. But inside, something dropped. And then it hit me. He wasn't just making small talk. He was testing how far he could push. NNTHE cabin dimmed into airline twilight. He leaned closer, elbow brushing the divider. "No one will believe you if you say I pressed," he murmured, eyes fixed on the flight map. The engines hummed under our feet, steady and indifferent. My stomach flipped, and I gripped the armrest just to feel something solid. I wanted to say something. I wanted to push back. But 40,000 feet up, you realize quickly there's nowhere to go. And hours later, while he dozed, I noticed his leather folder sliding open. A page peeked out, stamped with the board's crest. I wasn't supposed to see it, but I did. Transfer of assets, executive transition plan, a date circled, the same as the summit. My pulse spiked so fast I had to steady my breathing. NNTHAT was the moment I knew this wasn't paranoia. Something bigger was happening. And somehow my seat assignment had made me part of it. And I opened my notes app and typed a line. Seat 8A, he knows too much. My thumb shook as I hit save. The timestamp burned into the screen like proof. Before landing, he adjusted his tie and whispered, "Remember, this is for your own good." His cologne lingered, mixing with the sharp scent of jet fuel seeping through the cabin. I wanted to laugh, but nothing about it was funny. NNTHE wheels screeched against the runway. Passengers clapped like tourists, but my heart was racing for different reasons. In the reflection of the window, our shoulders overlapped like we were one silhouette. It felt staged, like even the glass had decided to trap me in his story. NNTHAT was just the flight, and I had no idea the turbulence was only beginning. The first night in Dubai didn't feel like a victory lap. It felt like a setup. At the hotel, delegates lined up under chandeliers while staff printed fresh badges. Mine was still warm when I clipped it on. I told myself it was just paper and plastic, but deep down I knew it was my lifeline. One swipe, one denial, and I'd be erased. I saw him again at the desk. He opened his leather folder, the same one from the plane. A page slid out. I swear I saw my initials scribbled in the margins. My chest went cold. Why was I in his documents at all? That's when I realized I wasn't just an observer anymore. I was already written into the story. Later that evening, there was a reception. The ballroom smelled like champagne and hotel carpet cleaner. People posed for photos in front of branded banners, smiling for LinkedIn more than for each other. I stayed near the edge, sipping sparkling water, when Jonas from the Copenhagen office found me. NNHE leaned close and said, almost casually, "Rumor is the board wants a clean break." NMY blood rushed to my ears. He didn't know what I'd seen in the folder, but hearing it from someone else made it real. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was orbit, in N, then came the part that still makes my skin crawl. I overheard him, the shareholder, near the elevators, laughing with another delegate. He didn't notice me by the glass wall, but his reflection betrayed him. He said, "She's green, easy to shape. If she talks, we say she's overreacting. Sensitive types sync fast." NNTHAT word again. Sensitive. Like a stamp. Like my identity was just a strategy. And I felt my throat tighten. And that's when it hit me. He wasn't just toying with me, he was already rehearsing my downfall. And back in my room, I sat at the desk with the city glowing through the curtains. The muffled traffic hummed like white noise. I opened my phone and took a photo of the note I'd written on the plane. Seat 8A, he knows too much. The timestamp glared back. Then I created a folder called Receipts First Upload, the blurry snap of my boarding pass when he wasn't looking. Second, a memo describing the champagne toast, his hand on my knee, the phrases he kept repeating like they were scripted. Too sensitive. For your own good. Without me, you're nothing. NTHAT was my way of fighting back. Not loud, not confrontational. Just proof that I wasn't imagining the patterns. Jonas texted me later. "Be careful who you talk to. Some names are already on lists." And I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Lists. Margins. Documents. My name tied to something I didn't sign up for. NNTHAT was the moment I knew. I wasn't paranoid. I was evidence. The next day, the summit started in full swing. Polished marble floors, camera crews buzzing like bees, delegates in suits checking their phones every 5 seconds. It should have felt exciting. Instead, my badge weighed heavy around my neck like a countdown clock. I kept replaying what I'd overheard. Sensitive types sync fast. That line followed me through every hallway, every handshake. It was like he'd already written my role for me, and I hated how much it got under my skin. Then came the slip. At the check-in desk, I saw his folder open again. The page with my initials flashed for half a second before he tucked it back. My chest went tight. I couldn't unsee it. And that's when I realized I wasn't just being paranoid. He was actually scripting me into his play. NNTHAT night, the first panel reception kicked off. The smell of cheap champagne mixed with strong perfume. Delegates posed in front of branded step-and-repeat banners like it was a fashion show. I tried to stay invisible. That's when Jonas found me again. NNHE didn't waste time. "They're planning a clean break," he said, his voice low. "Some people are already marked out." NNY's stomach flipped. He didn't know I'd seen the folder. He didn't know my initials were right there on the page. But his words lined up with everything I'd already feared. And it hit me. This wasn't coincidence. This was alignment. Later, by the hotel elevators, I heard him again. The shareholder. His laugh carried, sharp against the marble walls. He didn't see me, but I saw his reflection in the glass. He told another delegate, "She's green, easy to shape. If she talks, we'll call her too sensitive. Nobody will believe her." NNTHE word sliced through me. Sensitive. Again, used like a weapon, NNMY throat burned. That's when I knew I was already part of his cover story. And back in my room, I couldn't shake it. The city lights flickered through the curtains, muted by double glass. I opened my laptop and created a folder named Receipts. My hands trembled, but I kept going. First, I snapped a photo of the boarding pass he'd taken and tucked next to his own. Second, I typed out exactly what he'd said on the plane. "No one will believe you." Third, I logged the champagne toast and the way his hand had stayed too long on my knee. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even brave. But it was something. A way to tell myself I wasn't crazy. And that's when it hit me. Proof doesn't have to be loud to exist. NNTHE final confirmation came later that night. Jonas texted again, "Watch your step." Some names are on lists already. NMY heart pounded. Lists. Margins. My initials. The pieces lined up in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. NNTHAT was the turn. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't imagination. It was documentation. And whether I liked it or not, I was part of it. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Silence was safer than shouting. But silence doesn't mean nothing. It means watching, recording, remembering. NNTHE next morning at breakfast. The dining room buzzed with clinking cutlery and burnt coffee smells. He slid into the chair across from me like he owned the place. "Remember?" he said, eyes locked on mine. "This is for your own good." My stomach turned. I nodded like I agreed. But under the table, my pen was already scratching down the exact words. That's when I realized playing along was my only shield. NNSO. I leaned into the role. I let him think I was naive. I asked innocent questions. I let him monologue about realities of power. Every time he said trust me, I logged it. Every time he called me too sensitive, I wrote it down. Each note went into the folder labeled receipts. It felt like building a case from scraps. But scraps add up. During one of the panels, while the moderator fumbled with the slides, he leaned over and whispered, "Stick with me. You'll thank me later." The mic squealed with feedback, piercing the room. For a split second, I imagined his words amplified for everyone. My pulse spiked at the thought. Proof. If only the sound had carried. That's when I knew I had to make my own proof. NNSO. I synced my recordings to cloud storage. I emailed myself the photo of the folder page with my initials. I backed up everything twice. If he tried to erase me, I wanted my words louder than his reputation. Jonas caught me during a coffee break. He muttered, "People are already whispering you're close to him." My gut dropped. That rumor was exactly the weapon the shareholder needed. I asked Jonas if he'd seen anything himself. He hesitated, then admitted he'd spotted a draft resolution, one that cut our CEO out completely. NNMY chest tightened. Confirmation always feels worse than suspicion. NNTHAT, evening was the gala dinner. Round tables, chandeliers, polished silverware. Everyone playing dress-up for the cameras. He raised his glass across the table, looking straight at me. To new blood who know when to stay quiet. People around us laughed, thinking it was just a toast. But I heard the subtext loud and clear. I smiled thinly, nodded, and pressed record on my phone under the table. That's when it hit me. I could turn his arrogance into evidence. NNTHE symbols stacked up around me. The boarding pass folded into my notebook. The blurry champagne glass photo. The screenshot of my notes app. Seat 8A. He knows too much. Cold, ordinary objects, but together they felt like armor. NNWAs? I terrified? Absolutely. My badge felt like a loaded gun aimed at me. One wrong move, one rumor, and I'd be done. But doing nothing meant he controlled the story. NNSO. I chose the only move I had. Quiet resistance. Let him think he'd already won while I built a file strong enough to burn through boardroom walls. NNTHAT was my countermove. Not glamorous, not heroic. Just survival with receipts. The last day of the summit felt like walking into a theater. The main ballroom was packed. Cameras, microphones, a wall of flashing screens. Delegates whispered as the shareholder walked on stage, leather folder in hand. He smiled like the ending was already written. NNMY badge rested heavy against my chest. I told myself, one swipe and I could disappear, but I stayed seated, third row, hands damp on the program booklet. NNHE started smooth. Talked about stability, about fresh blood. Then he slipped. He said, "Conversations on the way to Dubai," hinting at me without naming me. My throat went dry. He was about to use me as his pawn, and that's when it hit me. He wasn't just testing boundaries anymore. He was rewriting history in real time. NNA delegate asked for proof. He opened his folder, flipped too fast, and a page slipped out. My initials stared back at me under the stage lights. He grabbed it back, but the damage was done. Cameras clicked. Screens zoomed. The room shifted, and I froze. My nails dug into my palms, but I knew this was the moment my silence had bought me, and Jonas raised his hand. His voice carried, "There are inconsistencies. I've seen drafts that don't match this version." He quoted a phrase I remembered from the folder. Gasps rippled. Faces turned. The shareholder's confidence cracked. I stood up. My voice shook at first, then steadied. "Has the board actually approved this resolution?" The words cut the air sharper than I expected. All eyes snapped to him. NNHE laughed, too fast. "It was just a draft, just a joke." NNTHE phrase landed like a slap. It was just a joke. Everyone in that ballroom knew. Jokes don't come with board stamps and signatures. NNTHE moderator froze. The press didn't. Flashes burst, mic shoved forward. He tried to pivot, calling it mentorship, calling me inexperienced, too sensitive. But now those words sounded toxic, not protective. That's when I realized his own script was turning against him, and board members whispered in the front row, their faces stone cold. A woman shook her head and closed her laptop. The energy in the room flipped. He was no longer the man in control. He was the man fumbling under lights. NNBY the time he stepped off stage, escorted by aides. The story was already out. Reporters murmured about manipulation, misconduct, rumors of a coup. His mask cracked under his own arrogance. NNTHAT night. At the debrief dinner, his chair stayed empty. An empty chair at a full table. It said more than any headline could. And back in Berlin, I filed my report and backed up every receipt. I wasn't fired. I wasn't promoted either. But my badge still scanned green at the office door, and that was enough. And I keep the boarding pass in a drawer. Creased, worn, ordinary. A reminder that even scraps of paper can save you if you read them right. And here's what I can't stop asking. If you were in my seat on that plane, glass in hand, engines humming, a shareholder whispering secrets, would you start building receipts? Or would you look away and pretend turbulence was the only thing shaking?